Welcome back to the Lobster Talks Podcast. We're here with Laurie again once a month. Usually we talk YC, we dissect what's going on in this crazy world of AI and tech innovation. Laurie, thank you for being here once again.
Yeah, awesome. It's good to be back so quickly after the last one. And it's also been a big week or so on your LinkedIn, having posted the request for startups from YC. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to focus on why they basically brought out a new request for startups so soon, 3 months after the last one, and what that means for investing in YC. And so, yeah, I guess that's probably the best case to start. We're gonna go through some of those. So, Gabriel, what's your first take on the request for startups?
It's fascinating because they used to not have one, or probably they had one, but they didn't publish it. And then they had one once a year, or maybe twice a year. It really depended. And now, only 3 months after the last one, we have a new one. And so it is so interesting for I'm a YC investor, so I get so many people asking me, hey, can you help me get into YC? Can you introduce me to a group partner? Can you do this or that to sort of help me get there? YC is giving you the blueprint to get into YC. This is exactly what they're looking for. And so, of course, they mentioned at the beginning, and we should mention as well, this is not the only thing that they're the only things that they're going to fund. But if you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to get into YC, like many, many are, I personally would be looking at this and seeing what resonates with me most and just, running with that specific thing. What's also super interesting, there's other levels as well. One, YC is now really shaping the world of AI and tech innovation. They used to say, apply and we'll take the best startups that come forward. Now they're really trying to shape how it's going to evolve by saying this is what we want to focus on. And then the last thing is it really allows YC to prove once again to some people who maybe were doubting it, it proves once again that they're at the edge of this AI wave of innovation because the way they talk about what's coming, the way they talk about the future, specifically in this request for startup, is pretty fascinating, and you can see the level of thought that's gone into it. You can see, there really are some of the most advanced people on AI, I think, and you can really see it through this request for startup.
And I guess the timeline's interesting from the last one, which had a number of kind of interesting topics in. Like, what do you think the rapid iteration and bringing out another one is that like systemic of the current startup market that we're in?
Yeah, you're right. I think AI is really accelerating. AI in itself is accelerating, and the innovation world is accelerating. It's the history of humans on Earth. It's always going faster and faster. If you look at the Middle Ages, there's literally entire centuries where no innovation at all happened, and now we don't have a month or actually a week without a new AI model that's way better than the last one, etc. So I think there are two explanations. One would be the previous request for startup has been filled. They got everything that they wanted. But I think the most likely reason, and two of them could be true, but the most likely reason is the world has changed so much in 3 months. It's crazy. And they published this, I think, the same day as DeepSeek R1, the latest Chinese open source AI model, came out, which is mentioned into the request for startup. So things are just evolving so quickly. I think they sort of have to stay at the right pace. That's even more interesting when you think about YC's move just a few months ago, actually, to go from 2 batches a year to 4. It all goes into the same direction, saying innovation is happening faster and faster. We need to stay up to date. And so they need to update the request for startup as well.
And I guess with that kind of pace of innovation, when you think about, oh, okay, last quarter, everyone was talking about this thing, and next quarter, something like DeepSeek comes along, it changes kind of perhaps the business model of, small AI companies specifically, but perhaps even the investability of much larger AI deals as well. Like, how does that pace of innovation affect I guess, an investor like you when it comes to things like deployment timelines or decision timelines, and then the same for around like check sizes and things like that?
It's fascinating to be investing right now. Almost everyone now, I think, is convinced that we really are riding the AI wave. Maybe we're still at the beginning, maybe we're well into it. Whatever the case is, first of all, it would be foolish not to invest in AI right now. And YC is doing mostly AI. I at Lobster Capital, I could probably say that I'm also doing mostly AI, or at least companies using AI very primarily into their product, even if it's not an AI model. And it's changing and evolving so rapidly, and it brings people back to the dot-com bubble potentially, and also the mobile wave. And same as the dot-com bubble, you could say, oh, it's very dangerous. You could say it is a bubble in itself. But remember, many companies crashed, but the ones that didn't ended up becoming eBay, Amazon, uh, all of those great. Google was founded, I think, in 2001 or something. Those companies ended up becoming uh, um, amazing giants, and the economics works. If you make 10 investments and 9 fail, but one ends up becoming Amazon, you did good. So it is, first of all, you got to be in the market. You got to be investing right now. Second of all, you got to realize that some of your bets are not going to work out, and potentially some of your bets are going to be irrelevant already 2 years from now. That's how fast it's changing. But the other option would be not to invest at all, and you can't do that either. So I think actually we talked about this together before in a show, trying to see how sustainable this investment is. How well is it going to play in the future? Whatever the future of AI might be, which we don't really know, but we can sort of try to see where it's going. And is this a need right now? Is it a need forever? And so you got to deploy, and you got to deploy sort of rather quickly, because if you're saying, oh, I'm going to wait for 6 months or 12 months, you might miss a cluster of this wave of what's happening right now. Maybe there's often some timelines that you only know after the fact, but like, oh, 2025, the first two, Q1 and Q2, those were the same years where this and this and this companies were started, because the models were cheap enough and the AI was already deployed enough in the companies. You don't know what it is, so you have to keep deploying. You can't skip anything. You have to deploy fast, and you have to keep in mind how fast it's changing. But I really think it's fascinating. I think this wave is going to create major winners. There's a lot of very smart people who think this new AI wave is going to create hundreds, if not thousands of billion-dollar companies. There might be a sort of an explosion, a Cambrian explosion of those startups that create immense amount of value, and that's where I want to be. And of course, I believe Y Combinator is one of the best places to invest in AI. So it is super exciting and super challenging to keep up with everything going on, and not have your startup be irrelevant in 2 weeks.
Right, and I think there's this here from YC around. Obviously, they encourage and teach the model of executing quickly, deploying quickly, and that seems super relevant here. For example, if you're a AI startup, perhaps working on, kind of retrieval based model or something for industry, now you kind of have to quite quickly transition out into more of like an agent based model, as tools allow you to do that. But so, yeah, I guess that's kind of the next question around. So if you're seeing these YC companies, you're seeing kind of often the first iteration of what that company is, or potentially even there's another kind of pivot coming. How are you looking then at the founders in such a short window of time? Because it's really kind of the investment into the founder, not necessarily the what the company's doing today per se.
It ties really well with what we're just saying, because you're right. Those companies, everything goes so quickly. They could potentially end up becoming irrelevant in a few months, and so it's up to the founding team to stay relevant, to potentially pivot, to make sure the company is actually going to succeed. And so and like you said, to keep up to date with the latest AI developments, because maybe you have an LLM that's helping you, and then 2 years later or 6 months later it's an agent, and you got to adapt to that. So first of all, um, judging, or it's not judging, it's like feeling how good or bad the founding team is, sorry, in a short amount of time, has always been what I've done with YC. YC has sort of always forced this on investors with their timeline, with their short program of only 3 months, and investor conversations really, really at the end on and around demo day. So I've always had to do that. It's not really new with AI. However, on top of that, I'm an engineer originally, and so I'm quite data driven. And there's been a number of studies, many of them are public online, about the types of founders that actually produce the best outcome, whether they're a personality type, but also their years of experience and how many companies they started before, and the university they graduated. So for example, the number one university in the US that has the most unicorns is Stanford, and almost everybody knows that. And I think the second one might be MIT, which not super surprising. And so if you have founders from Stanford and MIT, you could potentially pay more attention to them, knowing that's just one thing across everything else. So, I personally, I'm a big believer into show me what someone did in the past, and I'll tell you what they'll do in the future. So, if you want to take two people and you want to say who's going to be still actively working out a year from now. Working out is notoriously hard. People don't get, they don't want to. They want to remain a couch potato and watch Netflix. So who's going to be working out a year from now? Well, ask those two people. How often did you work out in the last 3 years? And if one of them says, oh, I've on average worked out every week, and the other one says, oh, I've worked out 5 times in the last 3 years, my money would go on, because in the past he proved such resilience and motivation, etc. I believe in the future it's going to do the same. So that's what I try to see with the founders. Could be in their previous jobs, maybe previous startups, but could be in the current startup that they're going after. What have you done? What have you been doing through YC? 3 months is both a very short and a very long time. Many YC founders, in the right environment, they are able to accomplish actually a lot of things. So that's really what I'm looking at. Again, hasn't really changed with AI. What's changed is that when you get the right founder with the right idea, you get a pace that's just insane. So, I invested in a company last November at the end of the previous batch, or early December. So for the, what's it called? Fall 24 batch. And I have a company that's just been growing between 400 and 500% per month in December and in January, and not from small numbers either. Because you say, oh, if you're doing $12 of revenue, you can, no, like from millions of dollars of GMV, and it's been growing between 300 and 400% those months. And that's because of AI. That's because of the founding team just really finds something that works, and they're empowered by AI. AI is a tool that gives you, if you're at the right, sort of angle, the right idea, just amplifies your results. And what's interesting as well with AI is that it's not only about the tech. It never has been. It really is now about the relationship that you have with the customers. How do you acquire customers? How sticky is your product, or how happy your customers are? Because building tech, code is going to become commoditized. Everybody can now create code with AI agents coding for you, etc. So it really is another thing that makes your startup defensible. It's customer acquisition. Sometimes it could be training the model, or QA, or stuff like that, and then customer satisfaction. And this is what they're proving. So that's another way that I look at this AI wave is, okay, you have the tech. What else do you have that's sort of protecting you and helping you grow super quickly?
And so, as well, with the same technical point, like obviously you mentioned that how you look at like past performance is quite a good indicator of future stuff. So assumedly with like technical things, you might look at their technical background, whether they've worked, in a technical role at another company. I guess, how do you evaluate kind of the technical ability of the founder or ability of the team? Or like what kind of signals are you looking specifically for in technical founders? Not necessarily that they would remain, obviously, as companies scale, it's most likely that they move out of those roles, but just kind of how you think about that in such a short time
Well,
frame.
You know what you just mentioned. Actually, they could stay in the code for for a long time. That's the whole founder mode thing that we had a few months ago. But potentially, you could grow the company and still be hands on in the product. I mean, first of all, I'm a computer science engineer myself originally, so I know code. Not that I do code every day, but I understand code. So first of all, it's something that I can actually understand myself, and I'm often trying to ask some technical questions to and you see the way they answer you, what their answer is, you start understanding some stuff there. But then when I think of evaluating their tech, I mean, of course, you can see their past jobs again. If they're a senior engineer at Facebook or Tesla, like they probably know a thing or two. But then I'm looking at two things. One is, does the product work, and is it solving a need? Like, do the customers actually use it? So it goes back to the traction that I'm interested in. If it's very easy to promise me an amazing product, but usually in 3 months, hopefully you have time to build it. So I want to see the product. It should be done. You should be shipping code and it should be ready by now, right? So that's the first thing. And then something else, sorry, that I look at is the pace. How fast are they shipping? I love a team that says, oh, we actually pivoted 2 weeks ago and we wrote our first line of code 2 weeks ago, if they have revenue. So sometimes, because it's so fresh, of course, you cannot necessarily expect someone after 2 weeks to have, millions of dollars of revenue. But I really think it's this iteration cycle, right? This is what YC tells you. Go talk to your customers and see what they want, see what they're ready to pay for. And if they're ready to pay, move forward. If they're not, which is often the case when it's your first idea, pivot into something else and look for this. And so the faster you pivot into the right idea, the faster you go to market. And so it's the same with code. The faster you're shipping code, the faster you're catching bugs, just the quantity of output in itself, I think, is a good indicator. All of those 99 or 100% of those companies have a huge technical component. And so if you're not able to ship code quickly, maybe it's because you're struggling with it because it's too hard for you. So maybe that's how, I make sure they're good. But that's something quite important for me.
So the reason I'm asked that is because if you look at there seems to be a much heavier shift in this one compared to the previous one into this kind of infrastructure, sort of deep tech related startups. This mentions there of kind of what is the data center of the future, things like inference and system programming. And these are now, I would say, possibly pushing a slightly further step into deeper technical founders, or where technical experience is much more a necessity, or where actually even just to get to a prototype requires a much higher degree of technical proficiency than perhaps even web-based products or app-based products. So I'm just interested how how you're going to think about that moving into future batches.
Yeah, I wanted to get to that point. I hoped we would get there. It's true. If you look at, so anyone can look at this request for startup. It's on my LinkedIn, obviously, but it's also on the YC website in the first place. And it is very technical. It is very, very technical, very sort of, it goes down one level from the application level to, the data center level, to the kernel level of those GPUs, et cetera, et cetera. It's interesting, YC has always been very technical. I'm saying this in the nicest way possible. It is a compliment. It's just a bunch of geeks. It is, and if you talk to them, which I'm lucky to do from time to time, and if you listen to the content that they're producing, they're all massively technical people. Even the ones that, do this shiny AI software layer thing, they're all massively technical. And it is an amazing thing. I mean, great products are built on great software. My read on this was twofold, or maybe it was twofold. One, the shiny AI application layer is always going to apply to YC. That's the kind of people who always want to make it to YC. They know about YC and they think YC is the place for them. But then the very, very, very technical sort of geek in his basement, maybe he doesn't think of applying to YC except if there's a specific video calling him or her out. And so I think that was one thing of that play is the rest, they don't really need to put in the request because they already, the 200 fintech for international payments or whatever, they all apply to YC anyway, so they don't need to put in the request per startup. The second read for me was, I think they're going deeper into the rabbit hole of AI. I think 2023 was like, let's try to build some stuff on top of ChatGPT, what we called GPT wrappers at the time, and let's see if actually anyone uses it. And now we're in 2025, and you're like, okay, everyone using AI. AI is here to stay. It's going to be mind-blowing in many, many industries. It's probably bigger than we even thought. And so because AI is only going to get 100 times bigger, now we need infrastructure. So actually, I was surprised that something wasn't in there, was the energy part. If the US wants to stay ahead of the curve in AI, they're going to need a lot more energy. And, China has been building in the last few years, I think it's 120 or 130 nuclear plants. Like there's more than 100 nuclear plants being built in China right now, which is insane, with French technology that they stole, but that's another topic. And in the US, there's 0 nuclear plant being built. And so that's a big, big, big problem. Nuclear is one of the cleanest and most efficient forms of energy. Of course, Trump is like drill, 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 or drill baby drill or whatever. So they're pumping oil out of the ground, and they can use this as well. And that's good. Not so for the planet, but let's focus on the electricity here. But anyway, the US is going to be having a massive energy problem in the coming years if they want to scale the intensity of the training and have many, many more GPUs plugged everywhere. So I was surprised this was not in there, but the rest is. So the kernels for GPUs that are not that are AMD or others that are not NVIDIA, the data centers lights out what they say. So without any humans intervention, the B2A, so the business to agent model, that your customers are not humans anymore, they're actually AI. So all of this is, and of course the first that's put forward in the request which is the AI app store, for everyone to publish and use AI apps. All of this is sort of, if you think of the app store, there's no better infrastructure for the world of mobile. And so how does that translate into AI? So I think it's a sort of a common realization. Okay, guys, AI is going to be much bigger than we thought. And so what do we need in order to get there? And this is what I believe this request for startup is.
And so then, like as a seed stage investor, there are probably a little bit of an increased time horizon with some of those investments, specifically like on the hardware level. How do you think that changes for someone evaluating kind of YC startups, kind of the traction that they're able to get in Demo Day, but then also those applying into YC? Do some of those products or some of those companies have to be now further ahead in their application phase rather than just the idea stage, or do you think it kind of doesn't necessarily change much?
I don't think it necessarily changes. I think YC likes later applications because they get a standard deal. They get 7% regardless. So it's better for them to get 7% of a bigger company than of just an idea. Now, that being said, I listened to a talk from several group partners. I actually don't remember who they were specifically, but there's not that many anyway. And they talked about specifically hardware startups. And when founders come to them, to the office hours, etc., they say, oh, it's different for us. We're not going to have traction. We're a hardware company. And what those group partners say to them back is like, no, it's not. No, it's not different. Instead of going out and building software, you're going to go out and build hardware. And then you're going to go sell it to customers as quickly as you can. And every time, invariably, at YC Demo Day, there are hardware companies that show up with, usually it's space companies, but there's usually companies that show up with tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of LOIs, sometimes very well negotiated binding LOIs where they just have to, ship what they promised, but the money's already set aside for them in the company, etc. I think there's even a company, probably we talked about, that had over $1 billion in LOI in 2024. And so we have to look back in 5 years and say, okay, where did this billion actually come? But I think one of the amazing strengths for YC, where it's actually even more useful for a hardware company to do YC than a software company, is that they just don't give you a choice and they tell you, you're a hardware company, I don't care. I want results, I want traction, I want money, I want revenue. And so we talked in the previous episode together on how we are probably at peak slow liquidity. I think liquidity now takes 12 to 15 years, but I have a belief, it's just a belief, but that it's going to come down and that liquidity is going to go back under 10 years on average with the pace at which startups are going and hopefully IPO window that's going to open, etc. And so I don't think this is going to be any different if my prediction is correct. I don't know if it will, but if my prediction is correct, this should apply to hardware startups as well, especially the ones that come from YC. If you're not at YC and you want to spend 5 years of R&D in your garage, you can do that. But I would, YC has been proving that their model works, including for hardware. We've seen, I'm sure you've followed it as well. Last month, the first supersonic flight of Boom, which is a YC company from 2016, I believe. So in less than 10 years, from scratch, as a private company, they built a supersonic aircraft, which has never been done before, and it works and it's safe. And actually, I believe it's American Airlines, or for sure an American company, that has ordered dozens of them. It's between 15 and 25. You can Google it. I don't have the exact number, but that's a huge number of aircraft. When you think, I think there has been in total maybe 5 Concorde in use in the world at a given moment, and they already ordered way more than that. So, that's a perfect example, and there's many, many more in the hardware space. So I believe hardware at YC is treated like everyone else, and the results are pretty amazing.
Yeah, and then shifting over obviously to the software side, where there's been a lot of kind of talk, especially over the last 3 years, with like AI agents and moving into like AGI, or at least more agentic applications of AI. How are you thinking about that? What have you kind of seen, or what are you interested in? Is it the same kind of thesis as other AI applies in there? Are there other problems that you're looking for them to solve? And then we can touch there a little bit on the speed to market that some of those startups can get to.
Actually, it's interesting because I've realized after the fact that I've been investing in some startups that were using agents just when the term was not coined and used as much as it is today. But that's something that I found fascinating, is what is possible now for a startup that was just not possible 1 or 2 years ago. And agents just brings this to a whole new level. That's again into the request for startup. It's David that says AI staff for everyone. David Lieb. So whatever only the rich could afford, and now you can bring it to everybody with technology. And an agent is that it's sort of a almost a personal assistant for everyone. But when David Lieb is talking about, on a B2C layer, like, anyone can have their own people booking their trips, or AI doctors or whatever. Think of this for a business. So I've invested in a company in YC that actually goes out on behalf of a customer and does a very complex set of tasks that, would took a human days and days and days and be extremely complex, and that no one really knew how to do well. And it's just now an agent. They did this last year. And so it wasn't called an agent, but that's what it is. And so imagine that's why I think there's a common realization that AI is going to be much bigger than we even thought. Because the example, like I said, I remained specifically vague. This could apply to so many cases, so many businesses, so many things that we do. Think of everything that's bugging you that you're doing over the phone. You have to move a medical appointment, but then when you call, the secretary is not there. You have to call again, blah, blah, blah. Life for individuals and for business is going to become so easy because you're just going to put a command into an AI, and the AI is going to relentlessly try to reach the right person. The AI is going to have a brain of its own to actually succeed in your task, even though it's complex. It's like sending an email to a coworker and like, hey, can you do this for me? You're going to send that to the AI and the AI is going to do everything. So this changes everything for almost every business. And so again, that's why I'm not I'm not only investing in specific AI models, even though I have on some occasions. And the one company I'm thinking of it's insane. They're really crushing it. So that's awesome. But there's an infinite number of businesses and ideas that you could just take this sort of new rules and apply it to yourself. And so that's what Jared Friedman into the Request for Startup talks about: vertical AI startups. You could take any vertical that you have a history with, that you have knowledge of, that you've been working in, and what YC recommends is just go to a friend of yours that works into any industry and just sit next to their computer for like 3 hours. And that's all you need. Just watch what they're doing and ask a few questions for 3 hours, and you'll get an idea. You're like, what? You're doing this manually? There's an LLM for that. And so the number of possibilities are almost infinite. And then I personally layer on top of that a lot of things. They have to be at YC. That's my fund's thesis. They have to have strong founding team. We touched on that a few minutes ago. They have to have strong early traction, proving that they know how to build and that the customers are really excited about it. It has to be defensible over time against other companies and against the inevitable, massive, rapid advancements of AI. And then when you have all of this, and Lobster Capital has to get allocation, but thankfully, inevitably, Lobster Capital does get allocation to the hottest deals. Then if we have all of that, then I invest in it. But it's really sort of a very open game, I would say right now, because there's so many things up for grabs and so many directions this could go. So we've talked about specific things here, but it's literally almost infinite what's going to happen, and no one is safe. The AI is coming for everyone.
So one of the things I was trying to think about or recently was in like how fast is it that those things will come to market? Because obviously there's this, assumption, or perhaps it's a given that these things will come to market and they will take away, X, Y, and Z jobs in X, Y, and Z verticals. And there's sometimes have to kind of step outside a little bit of the tech bubble and sort of try and be a bit more data driven. And I think there was some stats that came out in June, so it probably is more than this now, but it's like 23% of Americans have used ChatGPT, and the comparison to the internet is 95. And so the assumption is obviously that those two will begin to correlate a lot more, and at some point in time it will be 90% of Americans have used a product like ChatGPT or whatever the kind of equivalent in that many years is. But how fast do you think that is coming at the go-to-market level? So say, for example, if I'm making these, AI agents for X sector, like, is that really the opportunity today, or is it actually going to take quite a long time for those to proliferate into businesses and companies?
I think it's both. You're always going to have the precursors that are going to, buy stuff now. But, remember, business owners are pretty smart people, I believe. And also they have always the same idea. How can I make more money and spend less? And so if you're able to show them an agent, there's Martha in accounting that you're paying 100 grand. And then there's the software Tax GPT, which is a real YC company that you can just pay 10 grand a year. So that's 10% of the price. And that's probably doing right now 99% of the job, and tomorrow is going to probably do a better job, not because Marta is bad, just because it's going to train into so much data. And so I think actually it's going to be it's not going to be as slow as we think. I have a friend who's building B2B AI for a specific use, and he tells me that when he demos the product, some people actually believe it's fake. They actually don't even believe it's real AI. They're like, oh, you fed it you fed the system an answer before you knew I would ask that, blah blah blah. And you're like, here's the tool, try again. They actually don't even believe it's true. They don't believe it's possible. And that's today. And you and I, and probably our listeners, know how quickly it's evolving, because today it's impressive. Imagine a year from now. So I believe now is the right time to get started on that. Honestly, sometimes I'm bummed that I'm managing this fund, and I'm not, 23 out of school and trying to build a company. Because when I was started to build a company, I had no wave to ride, or maybe the mobile wave, but it definitely is the right time. It feels so exciting when you see all of those founders building all of those amazing ideas. And honestly, I think there's still a lot of very low hanging fruit that you can just go and run with. And to answer your question, adoption, if it actually works, right? You need to build something that really works, and you're solving a real problem, most likely way cheaper than a human that you pay because it's only code and software. Then I think many, many, many buyers, many, many business owners are just going to jump on it and make their life easier. Actually, a lot already have. It would be, it depends if you're in Silicon Valley on a high tech startup. You look at Klarna. Klarna just replaced the entire customer support with AI. They removed their sales force because they built something in house, etc. So that's the tip of the spear. And then you have businesses in Europe and probably other places. I don't know how Asia and Africa are going at this, but in Europe, everyone is like super slow and super late. That's how it's always been. So it depends where you are and who you're selling to. But even in places like Europe and others, I'm sure people are going to catch up because they're just going to realize it's better and cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, Klarna's Swedish, right? So they're doing something.
That's very true.
Um,
You're right. It's good that we should mention that. Not to insult every European other, we're both European. So, but sadly, I wish, we would adopt stuff as quickly as the US. It would help us remain competitive. Europe already has a big issue of being competitive against the US. If we at least use the right tools, it would help us. And many people don't, but Klarna does. So that's good.
so obviously, there's a lot of people who want to get into now investing in AI startups. There's a kind of explosion of funds around the thesis of AI or access to AI. And I just obviously want to hear from your perspective, like why then is YC the best place for people to be backing AI startups? Like then why is Lobster now at an advantage compared to other funds who are going to try and back similar
Yeah,
AI
you
startups with this wave?
Yeah, you're right. Maybe I should rename Lobster Capital to or Lobster AI Capital or something, or work the AI into the Lobster, the AI Lobster Capital. I don't know. I do believe very strongly that YC is one of the best place to invest in AI, actually for several reasons. We've seen in the request for startup, that was the topic of today, that they really are at the edge of thinking about what AI is becoming right now, is going to become in the future. And so this is going to be, this has not just been noticed by you and me. It's been noticed by a lot of founders who think, wow, those guys are pretty smart. This would probably be the place where I want to build. So YC in itself has always attracted extremely, extremely talented entrepreneurs. It always has and always will. Well, hopefully always will. But now with this request for startup, they've positioned themselves by saying, first of all, we're YC with the greatest incubator in the world, but also look at how well and how deeply and profoundly we're thinking about AI. So this is going to be an amazing, magnet to attract top talent. Then once they're in there, if you take the same founder, the same project inside YC or outside YC, obviously they have much more chances or odds of success inside YC because of the peer pressure of other founders, because of all the tools they have at their disposal, the visibility and publicity that they have by being at YC. Usually they raise more capital, etc. We've talked about this many times. And then, I cannot help but think of YC's network, and most specifically YC's very close ties with Sam Altman and OpenAI. As everyone probably remembers, Sam Altman was president CEO at YC before leaving to fund to start OpenAI, and so they've remained extremely close. There has been a OpenAI hackathon in partnership with YC in the YC offices, and Sam Altman was there. Like, they're really close buddies, I should say. And it's actually been revealed that YC companies are able to access models that are not even released to the public. And apparently, the models that they release are several months, if not years, behind what they're actually working on internally. I've heard very specifically that a startup called Casetext had access to the O1 model in 2022. The O1 model was released in 2024. So it really was 2 years before. And so, of course, you can do stuff with the O1 model that no one else can because everyone is on GPT-2 or 3 or something. And so that's an absolutely unfair advantage that YC startups have. That's nowhere else. And we know from one model to another how transcendent it could be, like how different the results are. So all of this makes for, I believe, YC really the best place. If you're somewhere else and you don't have all of those advantages, you really are at a disadvantage against YC. So I believe Lobster Capital, let's say YC, Lobster is focusing on YC obviously, but I believe YC is really the best place, probably the number one place in the world to invest in AI at the moment. And so, I'm so excited. I chose to invest in YC many, many years ago. AI didn't even really was a thing, sort of. But I chose YC because I thought they were some of the smartest, people out there, and already attracting amazing customers, amazing entrepreneurs. Sorry, they're not the customers at all. Actually, they invest in them. And now it turns out that there's this AI wave, and the two actually merge just beautifully. So I guess I'm lucky to be at the right place at the right time. But I intend to make the best use of that positioning, and I'm pretty amped up about the future and the results it's going to have for the funds and for the investors.
Yeah, cool. That's a nice place to leave it. But maybe we'll finish with looking then at the 11 or so ideas published from the RFS, like which is the one that is maybe the most interesting to you, not necessarily the one that you would back a founder from, but as a concept.
I think the AI App Store from Gary was really remarkable. It makes so much sense. And if you look at the money that's printed by the App Store, like App Store in itself makes so much money. And like Gary said, it could be made by a big company. It could be the OpenAI App Store. It actually exists. You can have personalized GPT, but it could be a new company as well. So this really, 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 really resonated with me. I was like, this, but it's also like super ambitious, right? So you better do it with YC's help, because like you're gonna go up against giants. I like the, it's not very new, but for me it's always, because you see the image, the in the dark data center. So you're imagining a data center with like no one ever steps in there. It's only robots. It's always a fun image to have. And well, I like the Diana's kernel AI software developers, basically building software for GPUs that compete with NVIDIA. But because it's very difficult, you could build this with the help of AI. So it's AI generated kernel software. I thought, it's very technical, but I thought this really amazing. And like I think she says in the video, this could be discreetly reshaping an entire industry. So pretty cool. But all of them are interesting, honestly. So yeah.
I like DocuSign 2.0. I feel like it's a bit of a left field one in there, but obviously DocuSign's like a $19 billion company. So
yeah,
I
I had shares in DocuSign for a while. I actually invested in a company that is building DocuSign 2.0, a YC company from the previous batch. So maybe they had the idea of other players could go after it, but I think this one is going to be solved by my portfolio company, hopefully. But yeah, they're very interesting. This is the only one from Michael Seibel, which I thought was interesting. Like he puts everything behind this idea. It is, and DocuSign is 19 billion, but there's so many others, HelloSign, and all of those other companies as well. So it is a very, very big market. All right, that's a good place to end. Laurie, thank you so much for being here today. And to our listeners, thank you for still being with us after 40 and some minutes. If you're still here, please leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. That really helps. Send this to a friend who's an investor or an entrepreneur. And if you're on YouTube, you can see our faces and smiles. Don't forget to subscribe to be notified for the next future video. Until next time on the Lobster Talks, see you. Bye, everyone.